Today's the day. We introduce a new digital board, the Yamaha M7CL48. We have talked about digital boards before when discussing the Behringer X32 hooked up for the recording studio. Here is the board we're going to be practicing on because it's otherwise not going to be used for anything here but class. This board was originally the main console for the Reskin Theater and was moved into the Watts when the Soundcraft VI-1000 died. Last year on Lottery Day, we were having a lot of sound issues with this board. It is being replaced with the Yamaha DM7 as of right now, January 2026. So now it is here in the studio for all of us to mess with until it quits being alive. Something that I hadn't been able to do while the last Watts show was running was factory reset the board. That is called Initialize All Memories. It is a full wipe of everything. I am a personal fan of periodically wiping digital consoles. Because, 1, I hate seeing remnants of old shows. I don't care what we did on the last 3 shows. I am not going back to that show, and if I was remounting it, I would probably start over from scratch or load a preset. If I was good at keeping organized, surely I saved a backup of the show file on an external device for safekeeping and archival. 2. Factory resetting can often solve some weird, difficult-to-define problems. I was hoping that factory resetting would fix the fact that this board is very old. 2007, I believe. But alas, it has some quirks and needs some new parts. But it isn't going to be doing anything too hard from now on. Anyhow, when you boot this particular M7, you will end up on this debugging screen. I have taken the time to recalibrate the touchscreen and do a series of fader recalibrations. This process looks like this. It theoretically makes the touchscreen better, but you really do have to poke this thing hard these days. The fader calibration is for trying to reset the internal motors to hit their marks properly. When fader calibrating, you may run across some faders labeled NG, which I'm guessing stands for no good. On this particular unit, there is one over here that I couldn't save, and the entire middle panel is unhappy to still be alive. It works fine enough though. If this was a newer board, we would send it in for service, and they would open up the whole thing and resolder in a central panel. Anyhow, when you turn this guy on, it will load this screen. That is not typical behavior. It will just do this until we replace the faders, which we won't. So just hit exit and it will hop to the normal screen. So you will start on the overview screen, inputs 1 through 8. This is what factory default looks like. Below the touchscreen is a central fader bank that Yamaha calls the central logic. The buttons next to the central logic change what bank of 8 faders you are controlling. When I am in 1 through 8, I push this fader up, and it also moves the fader over here. If I click another fader bank, it will snap down to match whatever is going on with that different set of 8 faders. There are 6 buttons for the 48 input channels, another button for some stereo inputs, which I will talk a little bit about more later, and 3 buttons for our outputs. By default, the input faders right here correspond numerically to these inputs on the back, just like on an analog console. XLR number 1 goes to fader number 1. XLR number 8 shows up on fader 8. It makes sense, and you can just go 1-to-1. You have 48 inputs, 48 preamps, and you could plug 48 microphones one by one into the back and have them show up in that order, just like on an analog console. But with a digital console, you can actually send any one of these XLR ports to be controlled by any one of these input faders. Channel 1 does not have to be XLR1. Channel 1 can control a mic plugged into channel 48 or 36. Click on the very top portion of the touchscreen and you can go into the patch name menu. I have channel 9 selected and by default it goes to in 9. I am going to change it to in 6. It will give you an "Are you sure" screen, which is valid. Next up, I have channel 10. I'm going to make it 7. That bit of routing is referred to as soft patching. Hard patching is plugging in a connector into a socket to get audio to pass. Soft patching is connecting the audio within a computer context. Another thing you can do from this menu that can be very important is name changes. Every channel here will just default to calling itself by its number, but here you can put a custom label. Call channel 9 vocalist 1. You can call channel 10 bass guitar. There's an option to change icons, which is just a fun little way to help with visual organization. It also provides general sample names at the bottom for speed. You will pretty much always want to label your channels. Going to click the X up on the top corner to exit that window. I'm back in my overview screen. Toward the top, we have our gain knobs. They are labeled HA for head amp, which is another way of saying gain. If I click the circle on the touchscreen, it will change us to the head amp patch screen. You can control the preamp volume on the central logic knobs, or touch and select the channel you want to control with the select button, and there's also a knob up to the left of the touchscreen. They both do the same thing in different ways. Here is where you can send phantom power to your condenser mics if your mics require them. Unlike the Mackie VLZ we were practicing on before, you can pick and choose the channels instead of an all-or-nothing phantom switch. You also have a button for phase change, which is a more advanced and specific use case kind of button. Yamaha actually has a nice article on when you might want to consider reversing the phase of a mic input that I will link in the description. You will not be needing it anytime soon in this room. There's some window options on the bottom here where you can simplify the head amp window to just one channel, perhaps reducing visual noise. And then there's the All button, which gives you 48 gain knobs at once. Let's X out of that. Next option down, click on this INSD out. This is for inserts, which we talked about before with analog gear, as separate rack mount equipment tied to your inputs. Again, special use case. You can send out a card slot channel or into the internal digital rack. More on card slots and digital racks later. You are unlikely to be using inserts anytime soon, but we will be using the digital effects rack in a later classroom assignment. Direct outs. We have previously talked about direct outs in context of sending to recording devices or AVIOMs. For example, I want to send my snare channel into an AVIOM personal monitor mixer. Direct out of the snare channel would save me one mix output. More on that later when we work with AVIOMs. The point is, until you have something more elaborate or complicated to do for specific sound reasons, you won't need to worry about insert and direct out menus right now. Next one down that is very common use, your EQ menu. It gives you a visual representation of your equalization settings. The default is called flat, which means there's nothing happening. No volume boosts or volume reductions at any specific frequencies, just pure whatever you plugged in, bad or not. You get two options you can switch back and forth on, Type 1 and Type 2. A use case example for this would be your main actor's EQ and their understudy's EQ. There is a library of ridiculous EQ presets that I absolutely would not recommend for any sort of live performance, especially not musical theater. My assumption is that these are fun suggestions for studio recording. When EQing, please just start fresh and use your ears. And add a high pass on most things that aren't a kick drum or a bass guitar. My suggestion is to plug in some music from your laptop or your phone and play around with this. That is an optional thing to do that can help contextualize what these things actually do and what it sounds like. You can try giving a massive boost at 5K or a low-pass filter at 500 Hz. The point is, this is a safe setup to practice and hear what happens when. You can even just pump your audio into a pair of headphones if you plug a pair down here. If you want to reset, just press flat. If you want to turn off the EQ entirely, there is an on button. It goes black when it's off. Next portion down, you get options for compressors and gates. And the next one is for compressors and de-essers. What these do and how to use them is another topic for another day. You get 2 of them per channel. Down from that, you see a lot of knobs. 16 knobs for 16 mix outputs, and that is multiplied by 8, so it can get a little crazy to look at. So let's simplify this menu and go into Selected Channel View. An easy way to enter selected channel view is to press down on any one of these physical knobs to the left of the touchscreen. If you want to return to the 8-channel overview screen, click on one of the buttons next to the central logic faders. So, knob press to get to this one, and button press to get to this one. Now that I am in the selected channel view, I'm only looking at channel 9. You can track 2 different channels by tapping up here, or I think it's easier to just hit the SEL button below the specific channel fader you want to be looking at. Back to those knobs, we can focus in on our 16 mix outputs. They have corresponding physical knobs on the left, or you can tap on the individual knobs to bring up a submenu. Mix outputs function similarly to the auxes on our analog Mackie board. You can send more input volume to specific speakers by cranking the knob to the right or backing off to the left. By default, the first 12 mix outputs are pre-fader. As a reminder, the amount of sound going from the input into the output is controlled by the knob only. The input fader can be all the way out, and you can still get volume if your mix knob is turned up. If you want the fader to control the amount of volume you are sending to the mix, set it to post-fader. Hit the pre-touchscreen button and it will turn black. White is pre-fade, black is post-fade. You will likely want things to be post-fade more often to start, so there is an all post-fade option over here. We labeled a few inputs earlier with the names section. It is also helpful to label our mix outs. They can be pretty much anything. 16 options, all flexible. Hit the mix button on the bottom near the central logic to enter the first output menu. Let's label mix 1. Going to just click the label up top and it will take me into the output name window. Let's label it main left. You will see over here it is currently soft patched to Omni 1. We have 16 XLR outputs on the back of the board labeled Omni 1 through 16. By default, mix 1 through 12 goes to Omni 1 through 12. You would think that mixes 13, 14, 15, and 16 would also just default to the same Omnis, but these actually default route to the effect sends. As in, mix 13 starts as a Hall reverb, and mix 16 is a mono delay. They absolutely don't need to do that. You can 100% send 16 mix-outs to 16 different speakers if you wanted. It's set up that way when you first turn the board on, but you don't have to use any of that if it doesn't serve your show. So, what is on Omni 13 through 16? Omni 13 is soft patched to Matrix 1. Omni 14 is soft patched to Matrix 2. 15 and 16 are, by default, our main stereo fader, this yellow guy right here. I quite often ignore the main stereo fader by unpatching it. You can use it, it resembles the way an analog board works, and plenty of folks would prefer to think about it that way. You would just have to plug your speakers into 15 and 16 on the back, as if they're labeled main out left and main out right, the way they often are on analog boards. Every input channel is routed to the stereo fader by default. It is post-fade, and you can't change it because there's no knob involved. It's like the main LR button on the Mackie. Either it's sending to the stereo fader, or it isn't. What about mono? Well, this one doesn't get a lot of action. It is unpatched by default. You probably won't use it. Famous last words, though. You might find a very show-specific purpose for it someday. So there's more stuff you can do on this board, but I'm not going to say everything there is to say about every setting in one video. I will show you one more thing, though. It is how to go back to the setup queue and erase anything you did for the next person. Click on the scene button on the bottom right. We will do a bit of scene programming later. In the meantime, you can just hit recall on the initial data, and it should go back to default. Everything I just did to poke around should be gone, and we can just start fresh for homework. Your homework is going to be plugging some stuff in, soft patching, labeling, and routing inputs to outputs. Simple system, 3 mics, 1 laptop or phone plug, 2 speakers, left and right. We are doing this out of numerical order to practice soft patching. I've got my 58, first mic, plugging it into Omni 46. Second mic, I got a 57, I've got an XLR, Plugging this one into Omni in 47. Third mic, I have another 57 to Omni 48. I have my 1/8" TRS 2 dual XLR male. Plugging that into this bank right here. Stereo inputs 1L and 1R. My outputs going to do this M audio speaker into Omni 13 and this Mackie into Omni 14. Those are my main left and main right. Don't forget to turn the speakers on. Okay, let's start with our 58. It was plugged into Omni input 46, but I want it to show up on input channel 33. Going to press up top and enter the name patch window. Let's name this something. Pick something fun, mix it up. This is Rumi. I'm going to give her a lady singer icon. Going to click patch. I am defaulting to input 33, but I want to go into Omni 46. Going to do the same for my next two mics. Mira gets a lady icon and gets patched to 47. Zoe gets a lady icon and is patched into input 48. Let's hop over to stereo inputs. Click the ST-in button on the bottom by the central logic. Select stereo in 1. Click up top on the name. Let's change the name to 1/8" left. Click again on the stereo select button to get the R channel and change that name to 1/8" right. I'm going to give them both a little PC icon. Let's adjust their input patches. By default, they are faders for the reverb effects. I want them to correspond to the XLR stereo inputs on the back, however. So, click on ST-in and route them both left and right. Don't forget to do both. X out of that. Let's go to our mix outputs. Push the mix 1 through 8 button down here. I want to use mix 1 and mix 2. Right now they are default to Omni 1 and Omni 2, but earlier we plugged them into 13 and 14, so we're going to need to change that. But first let's change the names to main left. Going to change this one from Omni 1 to Omni 13. You will notice on outputs you can actually assign to multiple XLR ports, so you'll want to unpatch it from Omni 1 before you move on. For main right, I want to turn on Omni 14 and turn off Omni 2. So theoretically, we're labeled and soft patched correctly. Let's route our inputs to our outputs. Starting with mic 1, I'm going to switch my screen to 33 through 40 and select channel 33. Going to click to get into the selected channel view. With the physical knobs, I can route this first mic going to mix 1 and mix 2. Let's try unity or a value of 0. Going to click on mix 1 and set those mics here to post fade. For these mics, I would like fader control for the volume. From this split window at the bottom, we can actually just route Mira and Zoe here to mix 1 and mix 2 as well. Make them post fader. Okay, I'm going to click on my stereo 1 channel for my laptop. Let's route those to mix 1 and mix 2 as well. Oddly enough, you can't break them up left and right with the mix sends, which is a shame, but also not a huge deal. So theoretically, we are sending out to the 2 speakers. We need to give our mics some input gain with the head amp control. Rinse and repeat for your 3 mics. Hooray! So good at sound.
Yeah.
Steph, I'm good good at sound.
So good at sound! Yeah! Also, where's my D6? Okay.
Okay, poke around the board while you have music plugged in and screw around. See what you can figure out. When you are done, click in the scene menu and recall initial data to reset it for the next person.
Digital.